Hello Internet, we return to 80s Vampire Month with easily the most out there film on the list, Tobe Hooper's Lifeforce. After Poltergeist and the Did He Didn't He Direct It controversy of that, which personally I don't care about, he definitely did direct Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He definitely did direct this as part of a 3-picture deal with Cannon, as well as the remake of Invaders from Mars and the amazing Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. He also definitely did direct the TV miniseries of Salem's Lot. So who cares honestly about Poltergeist? This film is bonkers. It's bonkers in a bag with monkeys and mixed nuts. What do you need to know about this movie? Do you need to know the budget? Do you need to know the financial difficulties Cannon found themselves in when this movie bombed? Do you need to know the prestige they were hoping to attach to it to take them as a movie-making entity up into a new level, out of schlock? You don't need to know any of that stuff. Do you need to know the allusions to Bram Stoker's Dracula? I'll touch upon those later. You don't really need to know about any of those. All you need to know is this is a film about a spacecraft that's on its way to study Halley's Comet, which is on one of its return journeys to Earth. Inside the cone of Halley's Comet, they find a ship 150 kilometers long. Inside the ship, they find space vampires, and they bring those space vampires to Earth. That is it. If you're not sold on that insane 80s, what I assume to be cocaine-fueled premise, because this certainly seems like a cocaine-fueled movie, everything is in this movie, then it's not the kind of movie for you. This is the kind of movie that could only be made in the 80s and has now become an amazing kind of document for a whole multiple eras of filmmaking that we just don't see anymore with the advent of computer technology. I love my computer technology. It has its place. There's probably CGI images in absolutely every single film we see these days, and it's the ones that we don't notice that work. So I'm not slamming that as a technology. As a historical piece of work, this has everything from prosthetics to puppetry to model work to visual effects, in-camera effects, special effects, good old-fashioned stunt work and explosions and car crashes with all of the stuntmen dressed up like zombies as London goes to shit in the final act of the movie. Long version short, this film's fucking nuts and it's absolutely bloody brilliant. Okay, so the ship on its way to study Halley's Comet is called the Churchill. And yes, when they find the big spaceship, that's kind of an analogue for Dracula's castle. Now, by all accounts, the people that built the model spaceship designed it on an artichoke. But if it doesn't look to you like some kind of fallopian tube womb type thing, and if the astronauts doing their EVA through it in their white spacesuits with their white jetpacks on don't look like little sperm travelling up to fertilise an egg in the womb, then maybe you just don't see things the same way that I do. They find 3 humanoids at the very end of this ship, encased in essentially crystal coffins, clear perspex, glass coffins, whatever. Very sort of like Snow White in there, in her glass coffins. 1 woman, 2 males, all nude, like as the day they were born. And Tobe Hooper makes no bones about confirming that fact throughout the film, especially with the female character, only known in the credits as Space Girl, not referred to by name or any title throughout the movie. We find out that Space Girl, as I suppose we're going to have to call her, as the astronauts were approaching, linked minds with Colonel Carlson, our hero, one of our heroes in the movie, and morphed herself into the absolute purest distilled notion of femininity from his mind, which makes you wonder what was going through the minds of the rest of the crew when the other two made themselves into dudes. But that's okay, because anything and everything goes in this movie. The Space Girl is played by Matilda May. She spends the vast majority of the movie absolutely Billy Bollocks naked. Now, I'm going to say this. Whoever cast her as the absolute epitome of undistilled femininity, they did a bang-up job. I don't want to slip into vulgarity, but she is easy on the eye. And when she does wear clothes, they tend to be these very sheer, diaphanous type gowns. Anyway, anyone who saw this movie when they were in the burgeoning stages, or even the middle and later stages of puberty, this movie and Matilda May would have had an impact on them. And you should not be ashamed of that. I'm convinced that was the intention. Her being so nonplussed about being naked, the character this is, I don't know how Matilda May felt at the time, and her poise, her regal posture, her alienness throughout the entire movie is so brazen. Just like some of the twists and turns and strange cul-de-sacs this movie goes down, it just seems to be an absolute party, a love riot. Everything's chucked at this movie, the kitchen sink. Now, these vampires don't suck our blood, they live off our life force. And when you are drained, you're turned into a shriveled, sort of desiccated, mummy-like husk of what you once were. But you're not dead. 2 hours after your human death, you come back to life. Think of the animatronic puppet corpse in Return of the Living Dead, and you've got a really good idea of what these creatures look like. And if they don't feed straight away, i.e. suck someone else's life force out to become fully fleshed out, rosy of cheek human again, instantly, then they die. They crumble in upon themselves or explode in an explosion of dust. But the person they fed on then, in 2 hours' time, rises and has to feed. The unfortunate small print in the clause is 2 hours after you fed, you need to feed again, and every 2 hours, and so on. So this vampire pandemic spreads like absolute freaking wildfire in this movie. So by the end of it, and the human vampires are not regal and poised like the space vampires are. They're either shriveled up or shriveling up, zombie-like creatures that are just feeding to survive, frenzied. So the final act of the movie, when London is overrun and bits of it are on fire and cars are crashing everywhere and stunts are happening all around you and the people are running around like zombies, even though technically they're absolutely vampires. This is absolute end of the world, World War Z type, Day of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, absolute freaking chaos. If you don't want to build to that, I don't know why you're watching genre movies. I really don't. There's a scientist brought in, Dr. Hans Verladen, and for that reads Dr. Abraham Van Helsing. He's the elderly statesman scientist who knows a little bit about the mystical side of things, so has probably a little bit of an inside track as to what's going on, or suspects sooner than the suits and the powers that be do. The Churchill, when it comes on its way back to Earth with the vampires on board, is the Demeter, or Demeter, however you pronounce it, the ship from Dracula, the ship that's carrying Dracula's coffin, where the crew are picked off one by one. The only crew member left alive is Colonel Carlson, who led the trip into the spaceship, and he's now got his mind link with Space Girl. He's obsessed and in love with her and mortally afraid of her all at the same time. It's to watch him try and grapple with the knowledge that every fibre of his being yearns for this creature that looks and feels like the epitome of everything he ever wanted in a woman, but at the same time screams its alien and deadly nature at him. I mean, he goes there, he goes for it. He really goes for it. It's fantastic. There are scenes when Dr. Faladin stroke Van Helsing hypnotise him to use that mind link for them to try and find her, so they can hunt her down in exactly the same way that Van Helsing hypnotised Mina to try and find out where Dracula was, to try and get the jump on Dracula. I mean, it's there. It's not subtle. It's not supposed to be subtle. You know, for fans of Dracula, it's there for them to notice. If you're not big into Dracula, that really is your loss. Through this mind link, they track her to an asylum. So you've got your Dr. Stewart standing in the guise of Patrick Stewart, who famously did this movie without reading the script. On a talk show, he said that he'd just found out that his conservatory was collapsing, the foundations needed redoing, and had been given a quote for that. A couple of hours later, his agent calls, said, "I've got a script for you, although I don't think you're going to like it." Patrick Stewart said, "I don't care what the script is, how much are they offering?" They were offering exactly the same amount of money as it would cost him to fix his conservatory, so he said yes. That said, Patrick Stewart, in the rich vein of British theatrical darlings who are in schlocky genre work, yet give it their all, does give this his all. And there's a wonderful scene where he is possessed of Space Girl and Colonel Carlson is interrogating her through him, and she is seducing him through Patrick Stewart, and Carlson can't resist and leans in and gives Patrick Stewart a big old smackaroonie on the lips. And if that kind of stuff puts you off, stop watching my videos, because this is the 21st century. Get the fuck over it. So, allusions to Dracula aside, there's really not much in this movie that keeps pace with traditional vampire lore, or even vampire lore that was being updated and reinvented in the 80s, bar the notion that you can kill these beings with iron, not a shaft of iron, not through the heart, but just below the heart, through the energy center, some kind of energy chakra. And that's where the old legends came from, of piercing through the heart. It does its own thing. This is the era for horror, striking out in bold, new and crazy directions, none more so than with vampires. The 80s yanks the vampire myth bang up to date, and this movie does more with it than it cuts, pretty much severs all ties with traditional vampires and displays its own vampires for what it's worth, for good or for ill. It just puts it all out there. It starts off like a sci-fi movie, then it becomes a kind of full frontal vampire movie, then it becomes a kind of zombie movie. If anyone has any idea what they think happens at the very end, please let me know, because I've got no idea. All I know is that by that point, the bonkersness has gone off the scale. Don't know if it's supposed to make sense. I don't know if I'm being slow, but I love it. So finally, I need to decide how 80s this movie is and mark it out of 80s, its 80s-ness. Because the aesthetic of this movie, the content, the story is so completely its own. There are no fingerless gloves in this. There are no perms or workout videos. There's no sort of MTV aesthetic. So in and of itself, it's kind of outside time. It's kind of a capsule movie in that way. So it's not very 80s. The way it was made and the technology, especially in the effects they used, themselves were state-of-the-art 80s versions of the way movies have been made since movies have been made. Model work, wonderful model work, stunt work, puppetry. So could I even call that 80s, or is that just every which way apart from maybe stop motion, which I don't think is it? Well, I don't know, maybe that blood god scene. There's a right. I'm rambling now, but if you've seen the movie, there's a bit in it towards the end which I call the blood god, and if you know what I mean, then you know what I mean, and it's just so even that bit when we were watching it, it made my other half go, what the fuck? And it's a what the fuck moment in a movie full of what the fuck moments. This one is right. I'm going to stop talking now because I'm talking to people who know what I'm talking about, and I'm talking in code around people who might be watching this who don't know what I'm talking about. But I don't even think that's stop motion. But anyway, how 80s is this? Apart from what I assume to have been copious amounts of cocaine consumed during the production of this has got the lowest score out of 80 for anything on 80s Vampire Month. It's got excellent stunt work out of 80. It's got excellent model work out of 80. It's got an anything goes, let's try and do this, why not put on the show right here, can do attitude of the 80s out of 80. And how do I wrap that up? You won't have seen a film like Lifeforce. If you like the kind of crazy stuff that the 80s gave us, which people just won't fund anymore because they're too scared of losing their money. And if you like amazing breasts, then you have to watch Lifeforce.